Greetings to all, I am The Fallen from the Game Heroes Forum, and this is my first edition of a series of reviews I call Tales from the Basement. Now I hope this will be broadcast on the Game Heroes site, because many types of gaming have been referenced on the podcast and elsewhere, but nothing was really said in depth about tabletop gaming, which is a favorite theme of mine. Now in these reviews, in these videos, I will review role-playing games, I will review board games, and I will also review what they call collectible games and miniature games. Now, for starters, the first game I decided to review is a board game, and it is called Hero Quest. It's an old game released by Milton Bradley in 1989 in Europe and elsewhere, and in 1990 in North America. It's by Milton Bradley, but it was made in association with Games Workshop of Warhammer fame, as many tabletop gamers here might already know. Now, it's the game that got me started into Dungeons & Dragons, and it's a perfect introduction for people who were always curious about D&D, but were afraid to pick it up because it seemed a little too complex. So, without further ado, let's get on with the review, shall we? The story behind Hero Quest is rather straightforward. It is set in a fantasy setting in which centuries ago a wizard called Morcar betrayed his old master, stole his magical secrets, and joined the forces of chaos, which, as you may guess, are evil. These forces corrupted Morcar, and he tried to destroy the Empire. He was stopped by a group of courageous heroes. However, he was not destroyed, and so he bided his time, and centuries later, he rose again to destroy the Empire with the help of orcs and the forces of chaos. However, his old mentor was ready as well. He lived for centuries and decided to train 4 heroes. These 4 heroes will embark on a series of quests in the hope of strengthening themselves and facing Morcar. Now, Hero Quest as a game is a dungeon crawl. So for all of you video gamers who've played things like Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, it's basically the same kind of thing. The only difference is that you play with a board, dice, and miniatures. It's for 2 to 5 players, but one of the players will have to be the evil wizard himself, Morcar. So there's one player who has to play the forces of evil. It's a bit like a dungeon master in Dungeons & Dragons. He has a role apart from the other players. The 4 other players, well, up to 4 other players, will simply play the heroes. First thing is the rulebook. Every good tabletop game has a rulebook. This one is not really thick. The rules, as you will see, are quite simple. On top of the rulebook itself, you also have a little booklet called the Book of Quests. In the Book of Quests, you have a map for each of the 15 quests, and on this map you have where the monsters are, where the furniture is, where the doors are, and as the players explore the dungeon, it will be the duty of the evil player to reveal the dungeon progressively. The main component of the game, as you can see here on the camera, is the game board. As the game goes along, as the quest progresses, the master, the evil wizard player, as I've told you earlier on, will be sitting behind this screen here, and he will put on the doors, and he will block off corridors with game markers according to the Book of Quests. Speaking of customizing the game board, the evil player, the evil wizard, will have access to all these pieces that you see here. These pieces are, of course, the furniture, the game markers, and the doors. Since the evil wizard Morcar won't be able to kill the players with furniture or doorways, he will of course need monsters to do his bidding, and you will have these monsters in spades in the game box, since you will have all these miniatures to help you along. Of course, a game like Hero Quest is also about heroes, not only about monsters or evil wizards. So here you have the components for the hero players, namely 4 miniatures, 1 for each hero. You have a character reference card for each of the main heroes with their powers, the number of dice they have to roll, the number of hit points, etc. And of course, good old character sheets here. Finally, you also have a series of specific cards and dice that you will use for Hero Quest. First off here is the monster deck that is used by the evil player, and in that you have the stats for all the monsters. You have the quest treasures. These are special items that you will find in specific quests. You have the treasure deck. This one is used when the players look for treasures in rooms. You have the spell decks. You have 4 suits of spell, each based on an element. You have the equipment deck. Those are the items that the players can buy in between quests. And you have 2 sets of dice. One is good old 6-sided die, and those are the combat die. They are used when the players attack monsters and vice versa. Skulls are for the attack. You have white shields for the hero players, and you have black or monster shields for the evil player. After choosing which of the player will be the evil wizard, which is the first thing you should do when you play a game of Hero Quest, then the other players have to choose a hero that they will personify in the game. There are 4 heroes, each with their disadvantage and advantage. First up is the Barbarian. The Barbarian is physically the strongest of all the other characters. He's the best at combat, and he has more hit points. His downside, he has no magic, no access to spells, and no other special ability outside of being really strong and really durable. The other character, which is the polar opposite of the Barbarian, is of course the Wizard. The Wizard is weak in combat, has low hit points, but he has access to a wide variety of spells that will prove pretty useful later on in the harder missions, of course. He should, however, keep clear of combat whenever possible. Third character is the balanced character, the best of both worlds, the Elf. The Elf is average in combat, but he has also access to a few spells, which make him the most versatile of the 4 characters. And then finally you have the Dwarf. The Dwarf is a peculiar character. He's average in combat, but he has an ability that no other player has, which means, well, to be more precise, he can disarm traps. In the later quests, there are a lot of traps in the dungeon, and they can prove not fatal, but really, really annoying for the party. So the Dwarf can remove these traps without even triggering them, so there is no risk. To move the players about, you roll 2 6-sided die, and depending on the result, you will be able to move the characters this number of squares, the number indicated by the die. Now, the interesting thing is, once you stumble onto a closed door, you will then have to wait for the evil wizard player to replace the closed door with an open door. And when the door is open, the evil wizard has to put in the room, as indicated by the Book of Quests, the furniture and the monsters that the players are supposed to see once they enter each room. Before or after moving your character, you are able to do one and only one of the 3 following actions: combat, spell, or research. We will begin with combat, which is the simplest of the actions. To do that, you simply have to go to a square adjacent to a monster and roll combat dice. Casting a spell is pretty simple. First thing, you have to be able to see the target of the spell. So in that case, the wizard wants to throw a fireball at the Chaos Warrior. If you can draw a straight line, then it's cool, you can cast a spell on the Chaos Warrior. Each spell is only single use, so when you're the wizard, you have to be very careful and choose when to cast each spell, because if you cast a spell early on, you will not be able to draw upon its power again in the same quest. You will have to wait for the next quest.